Most people who sit down to meditate fail before they even begin, not because they are incapable, not because their minds are uniquely restless, but because they were given the wrong instructions. They were told to silence the mind, to suppress thoughts, to force a kind of blank stillness. And so they sit with closed eyes, waiting for the noise to stop. But the mind does not stop. It chatters. It circles. It rehearses arguments, makes shopping lists, drags the meditator back into the world they were trying to escape. And the harder they try to hold it down, the louder it becomes. Alan Watts once said, "Trying to calm the mind by force is like trying to smooth the surface of water with a flat iron. The more pressure you apply, the more you disturb it. This is the paradox at the very heart of meditation. You cannot do it. The very act of trying guarantees failure." For meditation is not a technique, not a performance, not a mental trick. It is simply the art of noticing. Imagine sitting by a river. The water flows whether you approve of it or not. Leaves drift past, branches swirl, the current pulls forward. You do not command it to move, nor could you stop it if you tried. The river is not an obstacle. It is the meditation itself. And so with the mind, thoughts arise, sensations come and go. To meditate is not to stop them, but to watch them with the same ease with which you listen to rain on the roof. This is the uncomfortable truth. The harder you strive to meditate, the further you are from it. The practice only begins the moment you give up control. If these words already challenge the way you were taught, consider subscribing. This space exists for seekers who are ready to look at spirituality differently, without illusions, without dogma. The myth of a silent mind. From the very beginning, most people carry into meditation a false expectation, the belief that to meditate means to stop thinking. They imagine that the true goal is a vast inner emptiness, a mind as smooth and blank as polished glass. And so they sit down, close their eyes, and immediately declare themselves failures, for the stream of thought never seems to obey. Alan Watts often pointed out that this expectation is not only misguided, it is the very cause of suffering within the practice. The mind, by its nature, thinks. Just as the heart beats, the lungs breathe, and the eyes see, the mind generates thought. To demand that it stop is as foolish as demanding that the ocean hold still, or the clouds freeze motionless in the sky. When someone believes meditation equals silence, they set themselves up for frustration, because silence, in this forced sense, is unattainable. The very effort to be still becomes noise. The inner dialogue may even grow sharper under pressure, as though the mind rebels against its own suppression. This is why Watts would say, "You do not go into meditation to make your mind quiet. You go into meditation to become aware of the noise without resistance. The chatter is not a mistake, it is part of the scenery. Like the sound of distant traffic or the cry of birds in a forest, it belongs." In fact, the attempt to chase silence is an extension of the same restless energy people hope to escape. The achiever's mindset, striving, grasping, conquering, sneaks into meditation disguised as discipline. And yet, discipline cannot buy peace. True meditation begins when one stops demanding results. Thoughts arise like ripples on a pond. Some are shallow and meaningless, others deep and emotionally charged. But none of them require suppression. They are noticed, and then they drift away. The myth of a silent mind crumbles when we see that stillness does not mean absence of thought. It means absence of struggle. Silence is not something forced. It is the natural background, always present beneath the flow of ideas. Like space around sound, it is already here. To meditate, then, is not to create silence, but to recognize the silence that was never lost. The mind will continue to move, but for the first time, you no longer need to fight it. Effort as the obstacle. Everywhere in modern life, effort is celebrated. People are told to try harder, to discipline themselves, to push beyond limits. In schools, careers, and even in spiritual practice, the same command echoes: strive. So when they approach meditation, they bring the same conditioning. They sit with a straight back, tense their bodies, tighten their focus, and grit their teeth against the stream of thoughts. They believe that, by effort alone, they will arrive at peace. But Alan Watts observed the irony. Effort is the very thing that blocks the door. The harder one tries to meditate, the further away meditation slips. Because meditation is not an achievement. It is not a trophy won by endurance or self-denial. It is more like falling asleep. The moment you try to make it happen, it flees. Only when effort is released does the state arise on its own. Imagine someone floating in water. If they thrash and kick to keep themselves afloat, they exhaust quickly, sinking in fear. But if they let go, allowing the water to hold them, they discover buoyancy. The sea has always carried them. They simply needed to stop fighting. The mind behaves in the same way. When a person tries to force quiet, the effort itself becomes another layer of noise. The meditator becomes entangled in judging progress. Am I calm enough? Am I focused enough? Am I doing it right? These questions spiral endlessly, pulling the attention away from the present moment. Watts would remind us, the watcher and the doer are the same illusion. The part of the mind that tries to control the mind is still the mind. It is like a dog chasing its own tail, an endless loop of effort with no escape. The radical shift happens when one realizes that no effort is needed. Breathing continues on its own. Thoughts pass on their own. The world moves without permission. Meditation is not about controlling these rhythms. It is about witnessing them. To sit in stillness and simply allow, this is the courage modern people often lack. They believe surrender equals laziness. But in meditation, surrender is wisdom. And so the paradox stands clear. The very striving to meditate is the obstacle. The moment effort ceases, meditation begins. The flavor of presence. When effort dissolves, something subtle begins to emerge. It is not a dramatic revelation, not a sudden flash of enlightenment. It is simple, almost ordinary, the bare experience of being here. For the first time, attention is not racing ahead or chasing behind. It is not caught in argument or fantasy. It rests on what is already present, the rhythm of breath, the sensation of air on the skin, the hum of distant sounds. These details, always overlooked, step quietly into awareness. Alan Watts would often compare this to listening to music. No one listens to a symphony only for the final note. The value is in the unfolding, the texture of each moment. In the same way, meditation is not a task with an endpoint. It is the savoring of presence itself. Thoughts will still appear, of course, but now they are seen as passing weather, not as threats. A memory may rise like a cloud. An anxious thought may roll through like thunder. Yet beneath it all, the sky of awareness remains unchanged. The meditator discovers that peace does not mean absence of storms. It means recognizing the vastness that holds them. This presence has a flavor. It cannot be captured by words, yet it is unmistakable when tasted. It is the gentle relief of not needing to be anywhere else. It is the realization that nothing is missing from this moment, that the ordinary contains its own quiet perfection. At first, this may feel too simple. The mind, addicted to striving, wants fireworks, visions, breakthroughs, proof of progress. But true presence is not dramatic. It is subtle, delicate, easily overlooked. And yet, it is the essence of meditation. If you've ever touched even a glimpse of this presence, during a walk while listening to rain or in a moment of stillness, share it in the comments. Others who struggle may recognize themselves in your words, and your reflection could be the encouragement they need. The practice, if it can be called that, is nothing more than noticing. Over and over the mind drifts, and over awareness returns. Each return is not a failure, but the very heartbeat of meditation. To taste presence is to realize meditation is not something added to life. It is the recognition of life itself, unfolding right now, from practice to natural state. By now, something profound begins to dawn on the listener. Meditation was never meant to be confined to a cushion, a mat, or a special room filled with incense. These supports can be useful, but they are not the essence. The true heart of meditation is simply awareness, and awareness has no boundaries. Alan Watts would often laugh at the seriousness people attach to spiritual rituals. He would remind them, life itself is the ritual. The sound of traffic on a busy street, the weight of a coffee cup in the hand, the fleeting glance of a stranger, these are just as sacred as the silence of a temple. To limit meditation to a posture or a schedule is to shrink it into an exercise, when in reality it is the very fabric of existence. The shift is subtle but liberating. Meditation stops being something a person does and begins to feel like what they are. Just as a mirror reflects whatever stands before it, awareness reflects all of experience without judgment. Breathing is meditation. Walking is meditation. Even washing dishes becomes meditation when performed without resistance, when attention rests gently on the act itself. This realization dissolves the anxiety that often haunts beginners. No longer is meditation a performance with success and failure. There is no need to measure minutes or to judge sessions as good or bad. Every moment is already part of the unfolding. The meditator is not learning a skill to master. They are remembering a state that was always natural. Think of it this way: a river does not need to practice flowing. The earth does not rehearse turning. In the same manner, awareness does not need to practice being present. It simply is. What changes is the recognition. Watt suggested that when meditation spills into daily life, it becomes indistinguishable from living. The laughter of a child, the sting of disappointment, the warmth of sunlight, all of it is absorbed in the same open clarity. Nothing is excluded. Nothing needs to be resisted. This stage often brings a deep relief. The pressure to achieve enlightenment softens. Instead, there is the gentle joy of realizing that meditation has no finish line. It is not a temporary escape from the world. It is the recognition that the world itself has always been enough. The freedom of not meditating. At the end of this journey, a paradox arises once more. After all the effort has been surrendered, after presence has been tasted and recognized as natural, something unexpected happens. Meditation itself becomes unnecessary. Alan Watts often warned against turning meditation into another obligation, another achievement to check off the list. The mind is clever. It can even use spirituality as a new disguise for striving. I must meditate every morning. I must become more mindful. I must improve. But the moment meditation becomes a demand, its essence is lost. The true freedom is the freedom to let go, even of the practice. Meditation, in its deepest sense, is not something you do. It is something that happens when you no longer insist. Like laughter that erupts unexpectedly or sleep that comes when one stops trying, meditation is discovered only in release. Imagine someone carrying a raft across a river. Once the crossing is complete, the wise traveler sets the raft down. They do not carry it on their back through the forest, mistaking it for a possession to be preserved. In the same way, meditation is a raft. It carries one across the waters of restlessness. But once the realization dawns, the raft can be left behind. This does not mean the end of stillness. On the contrary, it means that stillness no longer needs to be summoned or forced. It appears naturally in the rhythm of living. The quiet is heard in the spaces between words, in the pause before action, in the simple act of breathing without interference. For many, this is the most liberating insight of all. They do not have to meditate. And yet, in that very freedom, meditation is always happening. Awareness does not depend on rituals or rules. It is the background of every experience. If this paradox resonates with you, if the freedom of not meditating feels like a doorway instead of a loss, consider subscribing. This space is devoted to uncovering truths that unsettle, disturb, and finally liberate, and your presence here ensures the conversation continues. Thus, meditation ends where it began, in the ordinary, in the flow of life as it already is. Not a technique, not a struggle, not even a practice, simply the recognition of awareness itself, untouched and eternal. The silence that was always here. In the end, meditation reveals itself as something both astonishingly simple and profoundly elusive. For most of life, people chase it as though it were a distant treasure. They follow instructions, they adopt postures, they repeat mantras, all in the hope of arriving at some exalted state. Yet the very search blinds them to what has always been present. Alan Watts would remind us that the silence we long for does not need to be manufactured. It is not created through effort, nor achieved through years of discipline. It is here, right now, quietly accompanying every sound, every thought, every sensation. Just as space allows all things to appear, silence allows the mind to move freely without disturbance. The great mistake is believing that silence means absence of thought. But in truth, silence is the background upon which thoughts come and go. It is like the canvas that holds a painting. It does not compete with the colors, it simply allows them to exist. Meditation is not the erasure of life's movement, but the recognition of the stillness that holds it all together. When this is seen, a deep relaxation follows. The burden of striving falls away. There is no more battle with the mind, no more anxiety about success or failure. The meditator no longer asks, "Am I doing it right?" For the question itself dissolves. Meditation is not a skill to be measured. It is a realization to be remembered. And perhaps the most liberating discovery is this: meditation does not begin or end with practice. It is not confined to cushions or retreats. It flows into daily life. In laughter, in sorrow, in routine tasks and fleeting encounters, the same awareness shines through. Life itself becomes meditation without effort, without name. So the paradox resolves itself. You cannot meditate. And yet when you stop trying, meditation is already here. It is not an achievement to be grasped, but a gift to be noticed. The silence you sought has been listening all along. Take this with you, not as another rule to follow, but as an invitation to let go. Sit quietly if you wish. Walk, breathe, notice, or simply live. Awareness will meet you wherever you are. And if you found yourself pausing even for a moment during this journey, that pause was meditation. Not forced, not earned, but discovered. It was always waiting, like the stillness beneath waves, like the sky behind every passing cloud. The silence has never left you. It never will.